and all is still go as we monitor our status for it. Good luck and Godspeed.
Have you ever had a premonition, a feeling that something dreadful was about to happen?
No, Mother, I have not been drinking.
Do you happen to have a pair of birds that are just friendly?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I have to go back into the past once more, just once more.
This is HitchPod, a podcast counting down the 20 best movies of the wonderful 20th century director Alfred Hitchcock. In this podcast, we rewatch a Hitchcock movie and then talk about it. I'm Dan Lipke, and I'm inexplicably disguised as a nun.
Yeah, but I still recognised you by your high heels.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm Kat Jones, and I'm explaining cricket tactics with sugar cubes. Because this time around, we're rewatching the 12th best Hitchcock movie, as voted on by our listeners, and that was The Lady Vanishes from 1938.
Yes. So what else happened in 1938?
Feels like we've been in 1938 before.
Well, we've been in 1937.
Anyway, in 1938, the first woman won a Nobel Prize in Literature, and that was Pearl S. Buck. She was a strong advocate of women's rights and civil rights and so on, but I can't remember what she wrote. But anyway.
She wrote a whole heap of stuff, I think,
yeah.
and got it for her body of work, I believe.
Great.
The drunkometer was invented, and this was a precursor to today's breathalyzer. So it was invented by Indiana University chemistry professor Rolla Hager.
Great name. Radiochemistry researchers Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, they discovered nuclear fission in their Berlin lab.
Yes. Sticking with inventions, we also have photocopiers being developed. Chester Carlson, he combined static electricity with light and powder, and he created the first, I think he was working for Xerox, so the first copy machine.
Would he have realised that about 100 years later, maybe the photocopy would be completely obsolete?
Yeah.
Anyway, ballpoint pens also hit the stores. And again, another almost obsolete invention.
Not quite as obsolete. The invention of Superman, created by Joe Siegel and Joe Shuster. So Superman popped into existence, and he's stuck around now for 85 years or so.
The most popular book that year was The Yearling by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, a story of a young boy on a farm who is refused a pet.
Yeah, sounds like a cracking read.
Yeah.
And we also have one new information source for our historical years, which showed up not too long ago. And this is from The Onion's Guide to Our Dumb Century, which is just a series of Onion-style newspaper headlines.
As if they were around in 1938?
Yes. So this one is specifically October the 4th, 1938. And the headline for this one reads, Chamberlain returns from meeting with Hitler, promising London laid waste in our time. Triumphant British PM says England will be bombed into oblivion. I have Hitler's solemn word, he added. So there you go.
Fantastic, The Onion. We'll keep bringing you these as we go through our next few podcasts. Anyway, of course, 1938 also saw the release of The Lady Vanishes.
Yes, and you're about to recap that for us, right?
I shall, indeed. In the fictional country of Bandurika, stranded passengers, including Iris, Margaret Lockwood and her friends, they endure a night at a hotel due to a railway avalanche. They're trying to escape, but they can't get out.
Yep.
Other characters are introduced in this opening scene, and I think that's the only purpose of this opening scene, to introduce the cast, and this includes Charters and Caldecott, that's Basil Radford and Norton Wayne, the actors, eager cricket fans, and they're aiming to return to England before the test match finishes. There's also Miss Froy, and she's played by Mae Whitty. She's a governess, and Gilbert, played by Michael Redgrave, he's a clarinetist.
There are a few others, but they're the main ones.
They're the main characters, and they will all eventually hop on the train. Anyway, the next day the train journey begins, but not before Iris is hit on the head by a falling plant pot. We know this is a key plot point.
Yes.
Pot plant pot.
Easy for you to say.
Pot plant plot point. Anyway, Miss Froy helps her onto the train, and later on, then she vanishes. She mysteriously disappears. Everyone else on the train denies she's ever existed in the first place for varying reasons. There's a bunch of different reasons.
Yes.
And they range from infidelity to unwillingness to be delayed on their journey home, not wanting to miss the cricket, and also a mysterious conspiracy, which Iris is smart enough to suspect. Anyway, Iris is insistent on finding Miss Froy, and she convinces Gilbert to help search for her. So Iris and Gilbert discover clues in a carriage filled with meet cute and magician paraphernalia, and that's Signor Doppo. His equipment is there. This leads to a scuffle with Signor Doppo, who comes in and tries to rescue his equipment. We also meet Dr. Hartz, a seemingly helpful doctor who I think in our previous podcast we thought should be called something different because he has nothing to do with heart surgery. He's in fact a brain surgeon and also involved in the conspiracy to kidnap Miss Froy.
Yes.
So just when Dr. Hartz seems to gain the upper hand, his accomplice, who is the nun in high heels, double crosses him.
Yep.
And that all leads to a gunfight and the revelation that Miss Froy is actually a spy, and she imparts a secret code in the form of a MacGuffin, a melody to Iris and Gilbert before vanishing again.
Yep.
And after more fighting, our heroes escape, and they escape in the commandeered train, overcoming obstacles to finally reach England, hop in a taxi and go to the Home Office or wherever they ended up and pass on Miss Froy's code. And that's where we find that Miss Froy is still alive and has beaten them back to England and is playing the encoded tune on the piano. They all reunite and presumably live happily ever after.
Yes, or not, as the case may be.
Yeah.
Who are we to speculate? Well,
That's
we will
right.
speculate a little later, right?
We may, because we usually want to go into a sequel, right?
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, if you want a more in-depth recap than that, we do have our Season 1 discussion of The Lady Vanishes out from behind the paywall at the moment. So that's on the main feed. Feel free to go listen to that to fill yourself with The Lady Vanishes content.
That's so much fun. I just listened to that myself. It was a really great listen. We only looked at that movie
It's about a year ago. Yeah. Do you have lodgers in your loft, stomping around, seducing your daughters and murdering the neighbours? Then you need Lodger Be Gone, an ultrasonic pest repellent solution to your unwanted lodger problems. Lodger Be Gone. Sound waves not included. All right, so as usual, I do 3 jokes and a limerick at this point before we get into any further discussion on the movie. Didn't have a lot of time for these jokes,
Oh, no.
so brace yourself. They may not be the best ones I've ever come up with. All right, first joke. Were any of the dozen or so characters on the train willing to help Iris and Gilbert find Miss Froy?
No.
Absolutely none. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. Absolutely none.
Oh, God.
I warned you.
Nah, you get a thumbs down.
Fair enough, too. All right, second joke. I assume when Charters and Caldecott were demonstrating the cricket fielding positions with sugar cubes, that they were highlighting how to defend it against a batter hitting one in the sweet spot.
Yep, thumbs down on that one too.
Fair enough, too. All right, got one last
last
joke
chance.
before we get into the limerick. All right, so the third joke. So Iris spent most of the train trip wondering where she disappeared to, and a dozen or so gunmen, failed to hit her as she fled the train at the end of the movie. Like, it's no wonder she was known as Miss Froy.
Oh. No, actually, I think you're going to get a thumbs up for that one. I like
You're
that
very
one.
generous.
Yeah.
All right. Very kind of you. Here's the limerick. All right. A disappearance not properly addressed left a semi-concussed Iris unimpressed. But Caldecott and Charters care not for train departers. They just want to get to the Manchester test.
Can you rhyme something with Manchester test? That is brilliant. No, you get a thumbs up for the limerick.
There we go.
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to give you a thumbs up for the limerick, but, at least you're 50-50 here on the thumbs up and down.
So what did we notice on a second time through of this particular movie?
Well, I think we both were kind of aware that the opening and the closing aren't as strong as the middle. And I think it's unusual. I think often you find the opening's really great and there's a saggy middle. But in this case, it's the reverse with this movie.
Yeah. I did remember this from the first time I watched it, that the whole scene at the hotel is just like, all right, we've got to get through this. We've got to introduce the characters. But yeah, I pretty much check out for that first scene. Just like a little bit, the comedy doesn't really work for me. Or the bits that do work are so sparsely distributed between the bits that don't work that I just want to get on the train. Because once you're on the train, the plot is absolutely brilliant. It's like a great mystery. It's all very thrilling. And then again, I remembered, once the gunfight starts, it's like, oh God, I'm a bit bored of this as well.
Yeah.
But between those two periods, which to be fair is the bulk of the movie.
Yes, that's right.
It's classic top tier Hitch.
It'll be about 90% of the time on the movie. Yeah, I think that's great. And but those scenes at the start and the end, they were not in the book.
No. So Hitchcock did add those scenes specifically. So I mean, I guess he figured they were necessary for for an adaptation into a movie.
Yeah.
I guess.
People, maybe he used to do what he was told to some degree. Maybe someone said, we need a gunfight, and he went, I can do that.
Yeah, I guess.
You never know.
And he did have some other positive touches. We mentioned in our previous podcast that it was his idea, or the movie's idea, to upgrade Miss Froy to an actual spy.
Yeah, that was good.
Which is, a magical twist. That's perfect. Like, you don't get any better than that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's typical of Hitch giving a woman an actual job rather than just being a sort of a sidekick. Maybe she's a governess and who cares?
Well, basically a MacGuffin. Like she's we did have this discussion last time, but she sounds like she was much more a MacGuffin in the book, whereas here she's developed into a character.
That's right. Fantastic.
The other thing that I noticed, which I don't think I realised the first time through, I didn't realise that the singer at the beginning was passing on the code.
Yeah.
I think I only got that as we were talking through on the podcast the first time. So once I noticed that this time, like I was ready for it this time, I was like, yes, that makes sense. And I felt in general that a lot of the plot made a lot more sense this time around. It was just like, oh, this is more cleverly constructed than I think I originally thought. This is tighter. Things make more sense now that I've seen the thing as a whole. It's just like this works quite well. There's still a few slightly crazy fridge moments, but for the most part, it's pretty tight.
Yeah, it flows pretty well, and then there's some really good plot twists, like the moment when you think she's going to find Miss Froy, and it's some strange woman in the tweeds. Like, that is an incredible moment. So I think that's really fabulous. And then that whole everyone is gaslighting her, it was so terrific as well. I mean, we've watched Gaslight fairly recently.
Yeah,
right?
we've watched Gaslight between when we watched this one the last time and this time. So there's definitely a lot of similarities between the gaslighting of Iris in this movie and Paula in Gaslight, and of course Miss Froy or Dame Mae Whitty. Yeah, she's in both movies, so that's a good connection.
Right. Exactly. And I think that whole, gaslighting, everyone has experienced it to either a greater or a lesser extent in their life. So you really do sympathise with anyone who is being gaslit, right? So it's such a wonderful way to get the audience on side.
Yes, yeah.
It's really brilliant.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed on the second time around is that the romance is actually pretty convincing too. I think I might have said this earlier, but I think Iris and Gilbert are a great pair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just pre-war, we needed these adventurous kind of people to be identified. It was like this sort of hero status where you were hoping that there were people who were going to, sort of carry us through the war years or whatever. Yep. So I find that, they were very convincing and very feisty.
They were great characters. So what's the most famous scene of this movie? Because we usually try and come up with the most famous scene. Did we come up with anything for this one?
I'm not sure that we really could pin this down. We had a bit of a chat about it, but I think, in hindsight, it's Charters and Caldecott who then became more famous after this movie came out.
They're the breakout characters, right?
Yeah, that's right. Somehow, exactly how. They were incredibly popular. They were a great comic relief duo in this particular movie, and there was a big spin-off. So I think their scenes probably, particularly, in the hotel, but also, and they're completely oblivious to anything other than what's appropriate in Britain.
Yes.
And that would have been very amusing to, probably to people in Britain, but certainly to other countries.
Yeah. So the big question is, are they overrated?
And I'm going to say yes. Definitely.
I mean, it's hard for them not to be, given, like, they're perfectly fine comic bit part characters. I just don't really see why, of all Hitchcock's movie kind of side characters, why these two were kind of plucked from nowhere and said, we're going to give you an extended run in basically the popular culture of the era. It's very strange.
Yeah, they had a really good run. We talked about this in our other podcast. And it kind of irritates me too, because it's like picking two stereotypical blokes to get more attention for being blokey. I mean, they're actually quite annoying. I'm not a fan. I'm not a particular fan of Charters and Caldecott. Give me Iris and Miss Froy as undercover agents in the war years. I'm all in.
Yep.
Give them their own extended period in pop culture. Like, that would be a lot more fun.
Yep. All right, so let's flip it. Let's go. What's an underrated scene then in this particular movie?
I think the bit that made us laugh the most during this movie was the carriage with all the magic stuff. And that is, the proviso there is that we don't even like slapstick very much, and it was a pure slapstick scene. Yep. But it was awesome. And I think it was more the undercurrent of the Lady Vanishes, and here we are with a whole lot of props that make people vanish. And that was just such a lovely sort of moment of symmetry there in that scene.
And they function as red herrings. Like if you don't know anything going into the movie, you assume that, well, look at all these magician tools. He must have used something in here that to do it. What's his name? Signor Dopo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a vanishing lady does suggest some kind of stage magician might have been involved. We have a stage magician on the train. Like,
so great.
It's got to have something to do with it, and that's what the characters think. So that kind of makes us feel as if, yes, we're definitely on the right path here. This is where the characters think. We think the same.
It looks like Miss Froy's going to appear at any moment, but no, we only get her glasses in the end. And yeah, it's really great. The Dopo, Signor Dopo appearing in mid-scene to sort of thwart Iris and Gilbert. They're stumbling around. They're in and out of the vanishing cupboards themselves. Yep. It's really good.
They're doing, a bit of flirtation. He's pretending to be Sherlock Holmes. They're, a little bit of lighthearted back and forth between the two of them. And then, Signor Dopo shows up and the whole thing just escalates into this wonderful comic scuffle between Gilbert and Dopo. Yeah. And I love stuff like this where it completely subverts every action fight that you've ever seen in any
so
movie.
Incompetent.
They're so hopeless at fighting. They can barely do anything. Iris has no help. She's fumbling around trying to...
basically got a saucepan over the top of their heads, not wanting to put it down on the wrong head.
Yeah.
It is really terrific. Yeah. So I think you're right. That is definitely the underrated scene.
Yeah. I just enjoy... pretty much everything in the scene subverts our expectations from the magician, the vanishing equipment of the magician, all the way through to the ridiculous fight at the end. And then, Doppo's captured, and before anything can happen to him, he's somehow disappeared.
He disappears
through a fault-baked bottom of the thing. I'm still not quite sure how that works technically. Yeah. That's fine. So over on Patreon, we have we continue to rewatch some of our favourite movies after Hitchcock's death in 1980, and we look at them all through a Hitchcock lens. And last month we covered the movie Barbie, 2023's Barbie.
Do you think Hitchcock would have liked Barbie?
Yeah. It's got a beautiful blonde woman in it. Why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Yeah.
Yes. So I think Hitchcock would have given thumbs up to Margot Robbie as Barbie. Yes. And I'm sure he would have enjoyed the humour in it as well.
Yeah.
So the next movie on our schedule is The Edge of Tomorrow, starring Tom Cruise. That one will be out later in the month. And but yeah, we've done half a dozen or so now. So if you want to become a patron and listen to us talk about those movies, you can visit patreon.com/HitchPod, and it's just $2 a month, and that gets you access to all the movies that we've recorded so far. Entire first season, which is every single Hitchcock movie, Hitchcockifications, all kinds of thousands and thousands of hours of listening. Maybe not thousands, hundreds at least.
Hundreds at least.
Yeah. Yes. And we are hoping, things get very busy around Christmas, so we are hoping that we can do a book club on The Wheel Spins, which is the book that this movie was based on. That's a 1936 mystery novel by British writer Ethel Lena White. And if we get around to that, if we can find time to read it, then that will also take place on the Patreon. If you've already read it and you're a patron, send us a message and we'll kick it off with you and we'll catch up to you. So let us know.
So we asked our listeners a few questions about rewatching or watching The Lady Vanishes, and you get a bit of a poll going. I have not looked at this poll, but it came up number 12 from the aggregate ratings.
Yes.
But what was the highest ranking?
Yeah, so this is from when we first got the listing of all the movies. So this is 12th spot. The highest ranking was second. So
that was me.
Nobody put it first. It might have been you.
That was probably me.
Yes. The lowest ranking was 21st. So we had 83% of people have it in the top 20, and the percentage who had it in the top 10, 39% of people had it in the top 10.
Okay, so it's a solid teens movie.
Yes. And again, for the third movie in a row, there was no difference between the patrons and the non-patrons.
Excellent.
I have looked ahead to make sure the spreadsheet's working properly, and it is.
Good.
And the next movie, there will be a difference, but no spoilers on that just yet. But just before we recorded this, we did run some Twitter polls to gauge updated opinions on the movies. So who do you think the favourite male character was in this one?
It'd have to be Gilbert, surely.
No, because I combined Charters and Caldecott. And
As one character?
As one character. They got 80% of the votes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so you're in the minority here.
And they are overrated.
Yes. So Gilbert only got 13%.
Oh, poor Gilbert.
Yes. What about the favourite female character? Who do you think that was?
Oh, it'd have to be a toss-up between Iris and Miss Froy, or possibly the nun.
Well, you pretty much nailed that. Iris and Miss Froy tied at 44%.
Okay.
The nun, 11%.
Excellent.
And question 3 was, where are you most likely to lose a new friend? And the number one option was on a train, 43%.
Yep.
On a plane was 0%.
Yep.
On a boat and in a moat were tied at 29%.
Fantastic.
And question 4 was, have you ever been secretly replaced by another person? 20% of our listeners said yes.
Yes. Fantastic.
And 80% correctly said, would I even know? So there you go.
So I want to know where they were replaced.
I don't know. You'll have to probe into our
Have some
Twitter
We need some
followers,
follow-up details if you've ever been secretly replaced by another person. But yes, secretly is the key word there.
Yes. And we did get Herman on Twitter. He had a comment on his favourite scene of the movie.
Mm-hmm. And he said, I love it when Iris is looking for a bit of paper proof dumped out with the trash, which, unbeknownst to her, we see blow up against a window behind them, adhere to the glass momentarily, and flutter away again. Pure Hitch.
Yeah, so this was the special tea, right? It was the wrapping, which Miss Froy's special tea came in, and which had apparently disappeared from the kitchen because they'd thrown it out, and Clue was right there for her.
And so neither of them look at this, do they? Neither of them notice it?
No, we notice it. The audience notice it.
But Gilbert and Iris do not notice it.
Yes.
But that tea is the reason why Gilbert gets on board in the end.
Yes. Yeah.
So the tea is quite an important
Maybe Gilbert
plot point.
did notice it. Did Gilbert notice it? How does Gilbert know about the tea? Maybe he did see it. I can't quite remember. She didn't see it though.
Maybe. He said he saw it in the kitchen, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so let's go back to our rankings then. You originally had this one second.
Mm-hmm.
I had it 7th on our list. Any changes to our original rankings?
Well, there could have been a recency bias in both of our rankings, but I haven't changed mine. I still love this number 2.
Yeah, okay. I'm not entirely sure. Like, as I mentioned, I don't love the opening scene or the shootout at the end, but the middle bit is so good that it makes up for it.
Yeah.
It might bump down a couple of places on recency bias.
I guess you don't know because
don't
we've got
quite
more to
know.
come.
7th feels kind of right, but maybe down to 9th or 10th. We'll see as we go. But yeah. So based on the ones we have rewatched so far, I do have it currently ranked at number 2 behind To Catch a Thief.
Okay, so that could be accurate for you. For me, it is number 1.
Yes, ahead of To Catch a Thief.
Just ahead of To Catch a Thief.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to do our deep dive into a specific scene. And the scene that we're going to do is Gilbert going into Iris's room. This is very early on in the movie. This is basically their meet cute. Iris is called up to complain about, we call it music. The noise in the room above.
They're dancing too, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
Noise
doing all
and
kinds of nonsense.
thumping, and anyway, Gilbert gets kicked out because, of course, Iris and her colleagues have a lot more money probably than him.
Yep.
So the hotel has come in and said, off you go, and because he's been kicked out of his own room, he emerges into her room, wanting to cause as much mischief as possible. So he invites himself in and says he's going to spend the night there.
Yep. He asks which side of the bed he could sleep on and heads off to the bathroom to brush his teeth and prepare for bed. And that's where we pick up the audio here.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a toothbrush.
I suppose you realize you're behaving like a complete cad.
On the contrary, you're perfectly at liberty to sleep in the corridor if you want to.
Hello?
Oh, I shouldn't if I were you. I'd only tell everyone you invited me here. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. I have a powerful voice.
Come out of there at once.
Not until you bribe the manager to restore me to my attic.
Come out of that bathroom. Hello, Boris? Look, I was thinking I might change my mind about that room upstairs if...
Oh, by the way, you might have my things taken upstairs, would you?
You're the most contemptible person I've ever met in all my life.
Confidentially, you're a bit of stinker, too.
So there we go. I did crossfade some of him singing to himself. Otherwise, that piece would have gone on a little bit too long.
It was long, wasn't it? It was about a minute of him singing to himself. What on earth were they doing then?
She was just looking frustrated as he was in the bathroom singing away to himself, making a nuisance. And that's when she decided to go call and say, maybe let him go back to his room.
I think it's an excellent meet cute there. Yeah. That is a great scene.
Yeah. He's that sets them up as antagonists, but also sets up there's some kind of flirtatiousness. Well, at least on his part, he's very flirtatious. Yeah. And
he tells her, I'll tell everyone that you invited me in here, which she realizes after a while that she can't get out of that.
Yes. Yeah. So he's and he obviously plays on those apprehensions of hers. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that as long as he threatens that, she will eventually back down and let him go back to his room. But the thing that I like about this is that she ultimately gets what she wants as well, because he does go back to the room, so she doesn't have to spend the night with him. But there's no evidence that he continues making any more racket. He might have learned his lesson. So I think everybody gets what they want out of this. Arguably she gets more than he did. He had to stop playing his terrible music. Yeah. And she gets a good night's sleep.
Yeah, that was great. And of course, it ties directly to the plot too, because Miss Froy was the one who wanted it to be quiet as well, because she's trying to hear the secret tune of the spy who's serenading her under the window, so she can take that back to headquarters in England.
Yeah, and this is like exactly the kind of thing that I was talking about earlier, where only on the second viewing really do you spot that's very clever. That's all tightly tied together.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yes. But the fact that she is basically using Iris to shut Gilbert up is that's her drawing her into the plot, or the spy caper as she does so.
And Miss Froy, of course, doesn't want to be the one who is making the fuss either. So, it is nicely done.
Yeah, well done. Good meet cute.
Your Honor, this is an armed robbery, and that would be a minimum amount of bail in a case of this type.
The request is denied, Counselor.
Put him downstairs, officer.
Introducing PayPalabi. Next time you're wrongly accused of a crime, don't waste time with expensive lawyers and impossible searches for justice. Instead, PayPalabi it. Receive an ironclad alibi for your whereabouts with all the convenience of one PayPal payment. PayPalabi. Innocence is one click away. All right, it's time for the Hitchcock do-over. And this is where we assume that Hitchcock had a further 85 years to think about it, and wonder what he might change if he had another crack at The Lady Vanishes.
I mean, I think he might have had a crack at the filming of Gone Girl or something different. But look, let's just say that he wanted to instead do The Lady Vanishes again. And, of course, he will. I think it was Freddie, wasn't it, on Patreon, who says that why don't we keep asking ChatGPT for alternative titles of the presumed do-overs? So
because it worked really well when we did His Girl Friday, and it worked surprisingly well. Yeah. So thank you,
ask
Freddie.
him?
I did ask ChatGPT. Yeah. So here are some alternative options if Hitch wanted to rename his second version of The Lady Vanishes. So tell me if you like any of these. You may not like any of them. Whispers in the Rails.
Nope.
The Enigma of Miss Froy.
Nope. I'm going to hate all of these. ChatGPT is so bad at titles.
The Phantom Passenger.
No.
Nope. Gone with the Train.
Gone with the Train. Actually, I don't mind Gone with the Train.
Yeah. And the last option is Covering Your Tracks.
Okay. Covering Your Tracks isn't bad.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I mean, that's kind of it does feel like a bit more of a screwball comedy, but that's okay. There's a bit of screwball in this too, isn't there?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, which one did you like?
I kind of ranked them in order, increasing order of how much I like them. So I think I like Covering Your Tracks best, just to tie in the train reference. I thought that was quite neat. So what do we think Hitch would have changed if he, apart from the title, to Covering Your Tracks or Gone with the Train?
He might have got on with it. What was the point of that hotel sequence? We could have had all of that mentioned in the dining car, couldn't we?
Pretty much, or
Yeah.
even on, almost just on the platform waiting for the train to arrive. You could probably just have quick snapshots of all the characters there, get all the information you need.
Miss Froy listening to a busker.
Yeah, you've got Iris's friends there. They're already there in the current movie saying goodbye to her. You can get most of this done. I think you don't quite get the meet cute in the form that we just listened to on the deep dive, which would be a bit of a loss. But you could probably work something else out.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing I thought that Hitch might want to play with, or I would pitch to him if I was in the writing room with him.
You would pitchcock.
I would pitchcock, yes. I would pitch to Hitch that I quite like the idea of Charters and Caldecott actually being concerned about England the country rather than England the cricket team, which is, I think that's a solid comic premise, and they abort it really quickly in the movie. It's just like...
It's only there for a moment in the hotel, isn't it, where they say, England's in peril, and we suddenly think it's a war reference, but then straight away it's about the cricket. But it could have just been continued on and on. I think there was, as you say, far more to mine out of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I was writing this or helping to plot it out, I think you stick with that for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah.
You could play into it, make the audience think that this is the pair of bumbling spies who are trying to do something.
Yeah.
But and keep going with all their references to England being in trouble. And it's only later on where you reveal that Miss Froy is the spy.
Is the real spy.
Yeah, and these two are just talking about the cricket. I would drag that out as long as possible.
Yeah, I think that's really great.
But if we were doing a modern version and we did want them to get back to Manchester for a game of cricket, we've got real world experience of this, haven't we?
Well, I think this is the most realistic part of this entire movie.
Yes.
The fact that the cricket is rained out at Manchester, which is precisely what we experienced this year in Manchester. I mean, we only had, a day and a half of rain?
Yeah.
2 days of rain instead of 5 days. But I can totally believe it. That is such a wonderful point at the end of the movie when that happens.
So maybe Charters and Caldecott, we get to play them in the remake.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yes. The only other thing that I thought of was that everything on the train is fantastic. I don't think you need to change an awful lot of that. I would keep the train in motion for the final scene.
Yes, it comes to a stop, doesn't it, for that shootout?
Literally
Does
comes
it need
to a stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the technology of the era. It would have been very hard to shoot action on a moving train.
It comes to a stop in the very same set that they stop at in North by Northwest with those trees sort of where the...
Yes.
It feels like I've seen this scene before, this stage set of trees in a field.
Yep. So I think if you keep the train moving, get the bad guys chasing the train in the car, shooting at them, jumping on the train.
Yeah.
And you can still have them trying to, divert the tracks so they get out of the country rather than going deeper into it. They've just got to do it while the train is moving, which makes it even more exciting.
That's right. You might even have some of the bad guys hopping into the luggage compartment. And now that Iris knows how all of those devices work, she could get rid of some bad guys in some of those.
Perfect. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the most recent Mission Impossible movie had a whole heap of on-train action at the end, and that worked really well, as most Mission Impossible movies do. So I think you steal a little bit of that. I think that would be much more interesting.
Indeed. So we often also think about the remake and which modern actors would Hitch cast in these roles. So we only need to think about these major characters, but I want you to start with Charters and Caldecott. Who are they going to be in the modern era? Do they have to be a cameo from someone famous? I think they do.
I think they do. And the pair that leapt out to me almost instantly was Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie as a pair of comic English characters.
Yes.
They may be a little bit old by now, but I think they'd work. And Stephen Fry has already been the president of the MCC, which is basically the cricket club that is in charge of the laws of cricket. So I'm sure he'd take the role. I'm sure he could drag Hugh Laurie into it. I think they'd be delightfully funny.
That's really good. And if one of them isn't available, we could sub in David Mitchell.
Yes. Yeah. Mitchell and Webb.
Good. Mitchell and Webb.
That would also work as well.
Yeah.
What about Miss Freud?
Now, Miss Freud needs to be, I mean, we need any of these older female actors, lots of wonderful choices here, but we'd probably go for someone like Helen Mirren, do you think?
I think Helen Mirren would work well. She's also a dame.
Perfect. Like Mae Whitty.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Sticking to the English actors, which I think it's good.
I think it's good to stick to the English actors here.
So I was thinking of Tom Hiddleston as, who of course plays Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think he'd make a good Gilbert. He's kind of this kind of charming,
slightly evil.
Yeah. Got a little bit of an edge to him.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, sort of tall, dark and handsome.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, sticking with an English actor for Iris, I think let's go with a Harry Potter favourite, Emma Watson.
Emma Watson would work perfectly, yes. Yeah, young Hermione.
Yes.
I think that's probably the right age with Hiddleston.
I think so. I mean, look, who knows? I don't even know how old Emma Watson is. She's probably 40, but she can play an actor in her 20s.
Yeah, I think our entire cast is a little bit aged up here.
That's okay. That doesn't matter. Everyone's a bit older in the modern era. Hitch would tolerate that.
Yes. And sadly, I think this means poor old Florence Pugh misses out this time.
I don't think she misses out. I think she can play the nun.
Perfect.
She had to imitate a Van Drieken accent or something, did she? I think she's good at that.
Yeah, perfect. Florence Pugh, you're back in the movie.
You're in every movie. So if we had a sequel, let's add a sequel to this movie. Who would we stick with?
Well, I personally would like to see a dramatisation of the fourth test of the 1938 Ashes.
Oh, yeah.
The third test was washed out. Let's see the fourth test. Let's make that real.
Can we have Charters and Caldecott trying to get to the fourth test from some other location?
Yeah. Yes.
They end up in Manchester, but they could easily be diverted somewhere else after that because of the rain.
Yeah.
You
I'm not sure
know.
where the fourth test took place. Let's say it took place at Lord's.
Yes.
So off they go to London. But more realistically, I think you could probably have maybe a little bit more of a Signor Dopo. I think you've got a stage magician. You've got a war. I'd like to see a stage magician doing spycraft during the war. I think get him to flip sides and work with Miss Freud. And I think that's a sequel somewhere there.
Okay.
He's a sleeper agent working against the wicked Bandrika government, using the power of illusion to work with Miss Freud and win the war.
Yes. Okay. That's okay. And then that we could have had this sequel coming out in wartime too, potentially. So, what's the title of our sequel?
So I did ask ChatGPT for a title for this one. It came back to me. It comes back with a lot, so I kind of get rid of all the rubbish and try to find the best one.
Well, you think you get rid of all the rubbish.
Well, yeah. I get rid of the most egregious rubbish. What was left for this one was the Doppelganger.
Oh my God, that's actually really good.
Yep.
The Doppelganger. I'm surprised it doesn't give you a colon because it always gives you the something colon something else. Did you say colons?
I went in and said 3 to 5 words, no colons.
No colons. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yes. So now that brings us to we've got the sequel, and let's go to the prequel. The prequel has to be Iris, right?
I think so. I think Iris and her friends.
Yeah, she had 2 or 3 girlfriends with her.
Yeah, and they'd just been on a skiing vacation.
I think it was a hen's trip.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks in a skiing vacation. I think that's probably got ski instructors. I think you've got a high farce ready to be made. You've got people in cabins. You've got fires burning.
Yes.
I think everybody going off to different rooms. Confusion, dim-witted suitors.
Yes, definitely.
Love triangles and quadrangles and pentagrams. I think that would be perfect. Yeah. Iris, of course, would remain stoically faithful to her idiot boyfriend back in England.
Fantastic.
But the other two, they don't care. They're willing to hook up with whoever.
Yeah, that's great. And perhaps they do end up with different people. We didn't see where they went in the end.
Yep.
And then the movie ends with
them causing the avalanche that starts this one. So straight
this is
in.
Great. This could be in my new number 2 movie if Hitchcock directs this one.
Yeah.
Now don't tell me you gave it to ChatGPT.
I gave it to ChatGPT. It came up with ski giggles.
Ski giggles. Oh my God, that's so bad.
Yeah.
No, I'm giving that a thumbs down.
Poor ChatGPT.
Poor old ChatGPT. Ski goggles.
Ski giggles.
Bloody hell.
All right. Let's move on to the 8-part TV show spin-off.
Oh my God, have we got the energy to come up with something else here?
Well, I did think if we wanted to skip this one, we could pretty much just take every script of Fawlty Towers and give it to the hotel owner at the start of the movie, and you've pretty much got a spin-off show.
Maybe that's where they got the inspiration for Fawlty Towers.
Maybe. Alternatively, I do like the idea of a series of adventures with Miss Froy undercover as a governess, looking completely harmless, but secretly getting away with all kinds of spy stuff.
That's great.
And I
all
like,
in different countries.
Yeah. And I like the idea that the bad guys know that there's a super spy in their midst, but they always assume it's, some tall, handsome dude or this femme fatale. And they think they've got the spy at the end of every episode, completely oblivious to the fact that Miss Froy's just run circles around them, defeated them, and she just wanders off and they just let her walk past because she's a harmless old woman.
Yes, every episode they arrest some more traditional candidate and she gets away with it. That's really great.
Yeah.
I mean, I would also co-sign a series with Iris and Miss Froy together, doing some of these capers as secret war agents deep into the war.
Yep.
But so tell me, what did ChatGPT think the name of this Froy episode thing was going to be?
It came up with Froy Story.
Oh no, Froy Story. Oh dear, that's incredibly bad. You can probably tell we don't have the up-to-date version of ChatGPT. We just have the base model.
Yes. All right. So let's find some related movies. If you particularly liked The Lady Vanishes, as you do, what other movies might you like, according to Google or various other recommendation sites?
Well, I always like to go to something from around the same era. I mean, this movie's 10 years later, but Sorry, Wrong Number stars Barbara Stanwyck and Burt Lancaster, and it's a woman confined to bed who uses her telephone to keep in contact with the outside world, and then one day she overhears a murder plot on the telephone and is desperate to find out who is the intended victim. So it's Rear Window-esque.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this feels more like Rear Window, but yeah.
That's right. And I mean, Rear Window, if you like The Lady Vanishes, Rear Window is very similar, a Lady Vanishes.
Yep.
So you've got that, but there's some surprisingly modern movies. There was a period in the mid-2010s where we had a bunch of books that were very similar to this vanishing sort of subplot.
Yes. So we did have Gone Girl starring Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike. This one's basically his wife's disappearance. Having become the focus of an intense media circus, a man sees the spotlight turned on him when it's suspected he may not be innocent. And we, of course, did cover this on our Patreon feed around the time we covered The Lady Vanishes the first time around.
Yeah, it's a pretty good movie.
Because it's a synonym, essentially.
Yes. yeah.
Synonymous title.
Yeah.
And we got one more modern movie.
The Girl on the Train. This is also very similar era. Emily Blunt and Rebecca Ferguson starred in this movie, and there's a woman devastated by a recent divorce. She spends her daily commute fantasising about the people she sees from the train, and there's this seemingly perfect couple who live in a house that she views, and one morning she sees something shocking happen there, and then there's a mystery that unfolds.
That sounds good.
Yeah. There's some unreliable narrators in both of these.
Excellent.
Which I love. I love the unreliable narrator. But it's a little bit of gaslighting too in these two movies. In fact, even Sorry, Wrong Number. So if you didn't like The Lady Vanishes, you probably won't like them either. But go away and have a watch. Yes. Or you can watch our next movie.
Yes. So as we usually do a face-off between the Hitchcock movie and the Oscar-winning movie of the same year. But we have already covered the Oscar winner of 1938, or the movie from 1938 that won the Oscar. And that was because Young and Innocent was released later in the US, so actually would have qualified for the 1938 Oscars. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull a similar trick to what we did last time, which is, as you might recall, Rebecca was both the Best Picture and the Hitchcock movie. So we didn't put Rebecca up against itself. We put Rebecca up against a screwball Cary Grant comedy,
Palate cleanser.
Palate cleanser, yes. Yeah. And we will, again, cleanse our palate.
Yes.
We won't go to an Oscar movie that we've already seen. We will instead go to, let's say, 1938's Bringing Up Baby.
Yes, wonderful movie.
Yeah, so we will go through all the major categories. We'll go through Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, etc. We'll probably decide which of these two, Bringing Up Baby or The Lady Vanishes, which one would have been the better candidate to win.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So that will be our next episode. Until then, I'm Dan Libke, and I'm certain you're not the Miss Jones I got on the podcast with.
I'm wearing the same tweed, though.
Yes.
And I'm Kat Jones, being very particular about what kind of tea I drink, and you know that is true too.
That is very true. Maybe you are the Miss Jones I got on the podcast with.
Thank you for listening to HitchPod. Please come and talk to us on Twitter at HitchPod Tweets or on Facebook by searching for HitchPod. And you can also email us directly at feedback@hitchpodonline.com. And if you want more Hitchcock content, please consider becoming a HitchPod supporter. Just go to patreon.com/HitchPod. And for as little as $2 a month, you can get access to our Season 1 coverage of every single Hitchcock movie, as well as bonus episodes on Hitchcock-esque movies. Invitations also to watch live rewatches and much, much more.
Can you describe her?
Well, it's a bit difficult. You see, she was sort of middle-aged and ordinary.
What was she wearing?
Tweeds, oatmeal flecked with brown, a three-quarter coat with patch pockets, a scarf, felt hat, brown shoes, a tassel shirt, and a small blue handkerchief in her breast pocket. I can't remember any more.